The 2025-26 season had started in the best possible way for Partizan. Euroleague had granted them a license to play in the competition for the next 3 years, and President Ostoja Mijailovic had announced that the budget allocated for the season would be €27 million, a record figure in the club's history. Fan enthusiasm was sky-high, tickets for games were selling out rapidly, and the president himself stated that the objectives for the season were to finish in the Euroleague top 6 and to win the ABA League. This ambition was further confirmed by the additions made to the roster, including Sheikh Milton, coming off 8 solid seasons in the NBA, Dylan Osetkoski, a key piece for Unicaja Malaga, and, above all, Jabari Parker, a player whose high status was underscored by the fact that he signed the richest contract ever handed out by the Serbian club. However, even before the season began, coach Zeljko Obradovic had already expressed some concerns about a thin frontcourt, noting that he had only 4 players at his disposal: Jabari Parker, Dylan Osetkoski, Aleksej Pokashevsky, and Tyreek Jones. I would also add that among them, only the latter could consistently and reliably fill the role of a true center. The shortage in the frontcourt was therefore real and needed to be addressed as quickly as possible. Before their European debut against Dubai, however, the Serbian side lost a key piece in the guard rotation. Frank Ntilikina signed with Olympiacos, leaving Partizan with Carlik Jones as their only true point guard. The Frenchman had been a crucial part of Obradovic's team on both ends of the floor, an element whose skill set could not be replicated by any other player on the roster. He was replaced by Miikka Muurinen, a young Finnish forward with significant upside but no experience at the highest level, and, more importantly, an addition that did nothing to address the roster's most evident weaknesses. The opening Euroleague games showed a Partizan team that was not always consistent, but nonetheless effective. The Belgrade squad recorded 3 wins in its first 5 European games, an encouraging sign when placed in the context of a team that still needed time to fully absorb and consistently execute Obradovic's tactical principles. Then came a major setback. In an ABA League matchup against FMP Belgrade, Carlik Jones suffered a fracture to the 5th metatarsal of his left foot. This meant losing the only true point guard on the team, especially considering Lundberg's earlier departure, for 3 months. It was a heavy blow for a squad that already showed clear shortcomings in roster construction. As a result, Partizan's front office returned to the market and, following a loss to Paris, attempted to patch the 2 weakest areas of the roster with 2 new signings, Bruno Fernando and Nick Calathes. The Angolan center is certainly a physical player with above-average athleticism, but he severely lacks fundamentals and reads, things that are essential to function within Obradovic's system. The Greek point guard, on the other hand, still possesses high basketball IQ and strong playmaking ability, but has been in clear decline in recent years, is not a threat from beyond the arc, and struggles to be effective in high-paced situations. These additions felt more like last-minute stopgaps, meant to cover up shortcomings that were culpably created during roster construction, rather than players whose skill sets truly aligned with what the coach required. So, the team's overall level was weakened because of injuries and bad signings, and this brought 3 losses in a row against Hapoel, Barcelona, and Dubai. At the end of the game played in the United Arab Emirates, Coach Obradovic even questioned his players' effort and respect for the fans. He said, "It's a big shame, really big shame. Milton came back after a long break, while Calathes had only one practice. But at least both of them showed something, while the others, I don't know what's happening with the others. I'm very disappointed." But things didn't get much better after that, since Partizan went 1-2 in the next 3 games. The last one, a loss against Asvel, made the coach upset, once again highlighting some of his players' behaviors as the main cause of the poor results. He had some tough words for the players, as he said, "I think it's shameful how we looked. Some players need to ask themselves why that happened. The reasons for this, in my opinion, are simple. The players are not thinking about the game. Before the game, everyone was on their phones. I said everything that needed to be said at halftime, yet after the game, the picture was exactly the same when I walked into the locker room. These things are unbelievable. I don't even know how to react. I'm not just disappointed, I don't have the words to explain how bad I feel." The situation in the team was tense, and after another loss against Fenerbahce and a 4-8 record in Euroleague, something had to be done. So, the coaching staff and the front office decided to hold a meeting to sort things out and try to save a season started in an unexpectedly bad way, but the worst was yet to come. At the very next Euroleague game, Partizan conceded a 25-0 run to Panathinaikos, with Coach Obradovic who tried to call multiple timeouts during that stretch, but that didn't produce any effect on his team. The last timeout of the game was particularly heartbreaking if you consider the Serbian coach's status and career.
Stop! Hey, listen to stop! Hey, say something! Hey, say something! Okay? Watch over here!
Seeing one of the best coaches in the history of the game asking if he could say something was tough, it was as if they weren't listening to him. And the game ended with a 22-point loss, and the 7th defeat in 8 European games for the Serbian side. Something that, along with all the problems with the players and the front office, could not be tolerated any further by Obradovic, who resigned from his head coaching position after the game. The legendary coach who won 9 Euroleague titles and brought Partizan back to the main European competition was gone. A shocking news for the basketball world, and an even more shocking news for Partizan's front office. In fact, they held an emergency meeting, rejected the coach's resignation, and decided to give him unreserved support. Thousands of Partizan fans showed up at the Belgrade Nikola Tesla Airport to welcome him back and try to convince him to stay. Unfortunately, this story does not have a happy ending. Despite all the efforts made by both the front office and the fan base, the departures ultimately involved sports director Zoran Savic, who had been with the Serbian club since 2021, assistant coach Josep Maria Izquierdo, a longtime and trusted collaborator of Obradovic, and Obradovic himself. The head coach was even offered the chance to rebuild the roster from scratch in order to convince him to stay, but he reiterated that his resignation was irrevocable and that nothing could have changed his mind. The fans are outraged and eager to make their voices heard. unanimously siding with the club legend who has just departed. They therefore decide to stage a mass protest outside the Biogradska arena, forcing Partizan to cancel the training session scheduled for that day. The club president Ostoja Mijailovic clarified the reasons behind the Serbian coach's resignation, stating that Obradovic told him, "The players don't respect me, my health is suffering, I am emotionally hurt, I cannot accept poor results, I am lost." The president then added, "He cannot endure the results, the players do not listen, and he doesn't want it to affect his health. I asked him to reconsider. I told him we could change the goals, even if it means being last in the standings. I also offered him to at least stay in the club's management, but he said he wanted to leave the system, that he loves Partizan deeply, and that it is his decision." Some people taking notes were crying. However, Obradovic later provided a different version of events, pointing to the club president as one of the main parties responsible for his decision to leave. The Serbian coach stated, "This situation is not normal and is not good for the club. The main responsibility for this situation lies with the club's first man, Ostoja Mijailovic, and I told him that." Sports director Zoran Savic did not have a contract, yet the transfer period was underway. "At my insistence, we talked every day, and I was surprised when I was told that Brandon Davies was leaving the club and that Osikowski should sign, even though I had told the president that he wasn't the player for us at that moment, and he told me we had already signed him." Further elements also contributed to intensifying the legendary coach's discontent. The inability to retain Isaiah Mike, the need to release Frank Ntilikina in order to free up a roster spot for a center, and a general lack of support from the club's management. So the fans demand the immediate resignation of the club president, identified as the main responsible for the situation that developed within the team. But Mijailovic didn't resign, and appointed Žarko Paspai as the new sports director, while Mirko Okokolic became the interim head coach of the team. The main candidate to replace Zeljko at Partizan was Andrea Trinchieri, but he rejected the offer because of the respect for his Serbian colleague and the whole situation created in Belgrade. And on the 4th of December, the first game after all that happened took place at the Biogradska arena. This was the atmosphere all game long. A long and loud chant for Obradovic, but also a harsh treatment for the players, identified as co-responsible for what happened. Three Partizan players in particular were heavily booed by the home fans: Jabari Parker, Dwayne Washington Jr., and Tyreek Jones.
And here is Jones, wide open as Milton finds him. Thinking about it. Dwayne Washington, Giffard trying to knock it away. There is a whistle there.
The game ended with a win for Partizan, but that wasn't enough to make up for the mess that's been made in the previous weeks. So, after the game, The team captain Milinkovic and all the other players attempted to reconcile with the fans, but without success. The search for a new head coach lasted several weeks, with many high-profile coaches unwilling to take on such a heavy legacy lightly or to coach a group of players that had not shown themselves to be a true team. Among the options considered was also the idea of entrusting the team to Okokolich until the end of the season, a hypothesis encouraged by the fact that the first 4 games across all competitions under his management ended in victories. However, this proved to be only a temporary upswing, as the results crisis showed no signs of easing, just like the tensions between players and fans. In particular, after a heavy home loss to Virtus Bologna, the fans once again booed their own players, with one of them even throwing a lighter at Washington Jr. Amid all this, Partizan still had some evident roster gaps, one of which was partially addressed at the point guard position with the signing of Cameron Payne, a former Suns and Knicks player with solid NBA experience. Probably not the type of point guard the team truly needed, but at least someone who would prevent Kalates from being the only player in that role. And, after a long search, the coach chosen to take over the bench of the Belgrade team was Joan Penarroya, coming off unconvincing experiences, the most recent of which was a short stint at Barcelona. In my opinion, he wasn't and still today isn't a figure capable of handling such a delicate situation, either tactically or in terms of leadership. But the choice, again in my view, seemed almost forced for both sides, and the agreement was perhaps reached more due to a lack of alternatives than because of genuine mutual interest. The protests therefore continued, particularly directed at Jabari Parker and Tyreek Jones, players with unquestionable talent and status, but who were unable to take control of the situation, especially before the whole mess unfolded. This led to a clear rift between players and fans, with the latter, usually present in large numbers at all of Partizan's home games, beginning to stop attending the arena with the same turnout as before. This situation was then followed by the departure, at this point predictable, of Tyreek Jones, who signed with Olympiacos to fill the void left by Fall after his serious injury last summer. The departure of the big man was a heavy blow from a tactical standpoint for Partizan. In addition to being the only center on the roster at the time, he was also one of the team's most effective players, as well as one of the best in Europe at his position. To replace him, the 31-year-old Tony Jakiri was signed from CSKA Moscow. While he plays at the same position as Jones, I don't think they're nowhere near in terms of overall impact on the games, and at this point Partizan couldn't afford any other downgrade. In terms of results, Penarroya's tenure started with 4 consecutive losses in Euroleague. A 25.1 against Maccabi, with 112 points allowed, a 13.1 in Valencia, a 17.1 against Monaco, and an 18.1 against Barcelona. In addition to that, Sheikh Milton broke a bone in his left hand, something that will keep him off the floor for 3 months. The captain Milinkovic then suffered an Achilles tendon rupture that will keep him out long-term. In the meantime, Jabari Parker kept collecting games not played, with his coach telling publicly that he's out of shape and the president who said they're not cutting him only for financial reasons. So the team needed new players, but the only one signed was Alex Radonov, a decent player but who can't have a huge impact on Euroleague games. And lastly, Coach Penarroya stated that Muurinen isn't good enough to play at Partizan's level, adding that he's probably thinking about returning to the USA. Despite giving some encouraging signs, such as the 27-point comeback in the home game against Hapoel Tel Aviv and the win against Atamans Panathinaikos, the situation is still serious to this day. Partizan sits 17th in the Euroleague with a 9-18 record, in a season that had begun with very different ambitions. The fans have returned to supporting the team, but the wound that has opened will be very difficult to heal. While the roster remains low in quality and poorly constructed, injuries and the various issues described throughout the video notwithstanding. The current campaign could turn out to be a transitional season ahead of a possible summer overhaul, which at this point may be the only viable solution to put a failed season behind them. And that is all for today, but before the outro, let me tell you a couple of important things. You can find some of my projects and pages in the links in the description. Then, feel free to support my work in any way you like. Thank you for your time and your support. Hope you've appreciated the video, and see you in the next one.